Good morning. My name is Terrell Harris, one half of the leadership team of the Open Box, where our vision is to make wholeness more accessible. Today's message comes from Genesis chapter 21, verses 9 through 14, and it reads as follows. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not inherit along with my son Isaac. The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, Do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on his shoulder along with the child and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. Today's message is entitled, Why Knowing Your Family History is Important. So, this story of Abraham is pretty crazy once we dig into the lineage. And I know we watch a lot of reality television, but if you really dig into the text and really look at Abraham and his ancestors and his relatives, this story has, or the reality shows that we watch have nothing on this story. So we watch Love and Hip Hop, we watch all the Housewives stories. Let's just go ahead and dig into the text, and I'll show you how crazy the family of Abraham gets. So, starting at the very top, Abraham's father is named Terrell, and although Abraham, we associate the three major religions with him, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Abraham's father was said to have worshipped other gods, and that's found in the book of Joshua. Now, Abraham is married to Sarah. We later find in this text, or earlier find in the text, that Sarah is actually his half-sister. So they have the same father, but they have different mothers. So there, it gets a little crazy just from the start of things, to where Abraham actually marries a relative, actually a close relative. Abraham is also the uncle to Lot. And if we follow the story of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah, and everything like that, but there's one particular thing that stands out that's pretty crazy in the story of Lot, and that is his two daughters actually get him drunk. They have sex with him. They get pregnant because they were either no suitable men, or they thought they were no suitable men, and they also wanted to continue the lineage. So you see, even in the relatives of Abraham, there's a little incest going on, which is pretty disgusting to say the least. Now, on two separate occasions, Abraham doesn't claim his wife Sarah, so they're moving around and they're going from kingdom to kingdom. And there's two times where Abraham lets the rulers know, like, hey, do what you want with this woman. She's not my wife, she's my sister. So what actually happens in both accounts is that God comes to the rulers in a dream and he says, you can't sleep with this woman because she's already taken. So here we see that Abraham really was fearful to stick up for his wife, or he was fearful to let people know, like, hey, this is my wife. She was said to be beautiful, but for whatever reason, Abraham's like, you know what? In order for us to be safe, I'll just say you're my sister, and they'll take you, and we can mess around, I guess, behind closed doors, which is kind of crazy in itself. Now, throughout the text, this Genesis text, God promises that Abraham's family will be numerous and they'll go on to be a great nation. Now, Abraham and Sarah are pretty advanced in their years. They're seniors, they're older, so they don't necessarily believe that God's promises are going to come to pass. So what Sarah does is, Sarah has an Egyptian slave woman named Hagar, and what she says is, in order for our lineage to continue, you go ahead and take my slave girl, have sex with her. This way you could have a child, and God's promises shall come to pass. So you see they're not really patient with what God is saying. And I don't know a wife in today's society that would say, hey, take my friend or take my slave girl and have a child with her. So finally, Hagar gives birth to Ishmael, and to fast forward the story, Ishmael is a prominent character in the Islam tradition. He's one of, I guess they look at him as one of the founding fathers along with Abraham. Now finally, later on, Sarah is able to conceive. She's no longer barren. God blesses her with the ability to produce a son, and she has a son. She has a son of her own by the name of Isaac. Or excuse me, by the name of by the name of Isaac. So the interesting thing about this is there's a mixed family under one roof, and Sarah's not really having it. So she sees them, Isaac and Ishmael, playing around, and she's like, you know what? I don't like the way this is going down. Some commentaries say that there may have been some sexual contact going on. We really don't know. But she goes to Abraham and she says, you got to get them out of here. So Abraham has a conversation with God. For whatever reason, God tells Abraham to listen to his wife, and he gives her bread and a sack of water and tells them to hit the road. So immediately Ishmael has no father, and he's sent out to the desert. Now God eventually blesses them, and they live with their lives. But it's kind of crazy to how you could have placed yourself in a situation or be in a situation, and instead of bargaining with God, trying to say, hey, you know what, I want to take care of all of my children, he kind of just kicks them off. Now, as we just went through the first portion of Abraham's story, we see that it's pretty crazy, and this would actually be a great reality television show in comparison to some of the things we watch on TV. Now, let's just talk about Isaac for a second. So, we're going to fast forward the story because there's a part in the story where Isaac is young to where Abraham goes to sacrifice him, and God kind of jumps in and saves him. So there's a little sacrifice thing going on too, which is pretty crazy. But let's just fast forward to Isaac's story. Isaac, as he becomes an adult, he marries Rebekah. Like Sarah, Rebekah also cannot have children at first. So you can see there's a pattern going on here to where Isaac marries a female who cannot produce a child or is unable to have a child at first. Now, the thing about this, about the barrenness, is always blamed on a woman in this context, so we don't know. We hear or we say that the women weren't able to produce a child, but it could have very well been the case that the men may have been off a little bit in terms of their producing as well. But the story says that Sarah, just like her mother-in-law, wasn't able to produce a child. Again, learn from his father as they travel throughout foreign lands. Isaac also says that Rebekah is his sister, and he does this to avoid any conflict with any of the rulers. Again, the rulers are warned by God, like, listen, you can't mess with her. This is Isaac's wife, actually. So you can see the pattern is transferred from child to stepchild. I mean, the patterns here are just pretty ugly, and they're trickled down throughout the family line. Now Rebekah finally gives birth to twins named Esau and Jacob. When we dig into their text, they fight over family birthrights. They play favorites. So Esau is Isaac's favorite. Jacob is Rebekah's favorite. So they play backwards and forth with the idea of who's going to receive the birthright. Jacob tricks Esau into selling him his birthright because he's hungry. And then later on, Jacob dresses up like Esau and puts fur on himself because Esau was. So it gets pretty crazy in terms of this story as well. So there's a family dynamic that we see that is pretty unhealthy. And much later in the story, so I'm going on throughout the text in Genesis, we even see that two of Jacob's sons have sex with their sisters. So there's incest. So if we remember back to Lot, who was Abraham's nephew, there was incest in that part of the family as well. And for whatever reason, it trickles down all the way down to it trickles all the way down to Esau and actually Jacob's son. So it's, digging into this text, it was pretty interesting. I actually had to map out, a lot of the lineage. Thank God I had software that actually puts out, the family tree structure. There's a lot of names, there's a lot of things going on, but we see the patterns. So we see that there's unhealthy relationships between the husband and wives. We see that there's incest. We see that there's favoritism. We see that there's, a single parent situation pushed off to where, there's not much interaction or not too much interaction between Jacob and his son Ishmael. So the family dynamics in this particular story is crazy. I mean, and that's probably why I was stuttering, because there's just so much going on in this story. And yeah, I'm a fan of Iyanla Fix My Life. And the thing about this particular story is we see that the same bad traits are passed down from grandparent to from great grandparent to grandfather to father to son, nephews and nieces. And on Fix My Life, what typically is the case when Iyanla goes into these situations to fix the family, she points out that there's always a family pattern. So even, watching last night's episode, she saw that the son was unable to have healthy relationships with his daughters, and he was unable to have a healthy relationship as it relates to mending the differences between his wife and his mother, mainly because he was abandoned by his mom and he didn't know, or he didn't receive the proper parenting skills. So the role model he had as a parent and his mother wasn't there. She was absent for like 12 years. So he in turn became an absent father because his daughters weren't in the house with him. He had a new wife, and his daughters actually believed or told the story that they felt that he was absent in their lives. So you can see the patterns trickle down from generation to generation, and oftentimes we do not, because we're not aware of our family history, or because we don't necessarily know it or dig into it, we just keep continuing the same mistakes and the same patterns. So in my particular degree, what we do, we take counseling classes. So one of the counseling classes I took that was an elective was family counseling and therapy. So we actually do what is called a genogram, and it's really just a family tree, but it gets a little bit more technical because you put in a lot of characteristics. You put in religious affiliations, you put in health, you put in whether or not your family had addictions. You put in everything, and we do this in this particular counseling session because we want to do the same thing Iyanla does, which is to pinpoint some of the patterns or some of the family characteristics which are passed down from generation to generation, and we want to put a stop, or we want to stop some of the things that are bad, and then we also want to notify or pay attention to some of the things that are actually good. So if there are positive things going on in our family history, we want to be sure to repeat that and not repeat the negative things. And I would suspect that if Abraham's ancestors really, really, really dug into their history, some of the patterns wouldn't have been repeated. So for us, the reason we must know our family history and know our family lineage is so that we do not repeat the mistakes of our ancestors. Now, it will be a hard thing at times to sit down and hash out all of our family history, but trust me, it will be beneficial for you, for me, and for everyone watching this video to seriously know our family history. This way we will not repeat the mistakes of our ancestors. Peace and blessings. I hope this message helped you. Let us close in a word of prayer. God, we thank you for the opportunity to come today and hear a word. We thank you for the stories of the Bible, which are sometimes like reality stories. So we're thankful that you placed this example before us to learn. We are so happy that we're able to hear a word and get some insight into some of our family history and our family dynamics. And I also pray that anybody hearing this message will have the courage to dig into their family history so they will not repeat the mistakes of the past. This we ask in your son's name. Amen. Peace and blessings, everybody. Enjoy your day. I'm out.